Welcome to Search Talk Live with search engine optimization and marketing experts Robert O'Haver and Caleb McKelvin, powered by the Robert Palmer family of companies.
All right, welcome back to Search Talk Live. I'm your host, Robert O'Haver, along with Caleb McKelvin. Caleb, how's it going?
What's going on, man? It is going fantastic.
We were off last week, and I tell you,
we were off last week.
I missed the show in just a week. I was just like, oh,
yeah.
man.
Well, actually, I got it from my desk at like 3 o'clock and started walking over to the studio, and I was like, wait, no, I'm not supposed to be doing that. We're actually off. So, yeah, it was a weird day for me. I didn't know what to do with myself. Yeah. But we're back in studio now, and ready to get it. We got a good one.
Yeah, I don't know if people were just trying to catch up on podcasts last week, but we had an amazing amount of people listening to the show. I mean, at first we had Michael Stricker on, which had an amazing amount of people listening to his episode talking about the Penguin update. And we did that probably, 3 months before that actually came out. So,
right.
When it
great
hit,
episode,
it was perfect.
Too.
Yeah,
it was a great episode.
Everything was still, right on as far as information. And then, let's see, we had...
and big shout out to Michael. He's always interacting on social media with us, sharing posts and everything like that, sharing shows. So definitely appreciate it.
I mean, everybody, all the guests that have been on the show have been really good at sharing and being our ambassadors, so to speak.
No, absolutely. We really appreciate their input and their experience and everything they do to help promote the show.
Yeah. I want to give a special shout out to the people in the UK. I mean, of course, we have the United States, which is a large part of our listenership. But amazingly, the UK, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and Sweden have a large listenership over there of our show. And I want to thank you guys for supporting us.
Yeah.
And spread the word.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Let people know.
It's crazy to see how our show's gaining popularity overseas. So it's really cool to see, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the other side of the world.
Right.
Taiwan, I'm getting stuff from there.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's overwhelming for me because I never thought this podcast was ever going to take off, but it has.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a hobby at first, but I don't want to go into that again.
Here we are.
Yeah, so... Those of you listening for the first time, Search Talk Live is a digital marketing podcast where we talk about everything to do with digital. It could be a platform, it could be social media, it could be SEO.
Yep.
We do a lot of SEO stuff, social media, content marketing, conversion optimization. Next year, we're getting more specific into industries that are really difficult for SEO.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about real estate. We'll be talking about law firms and stuff like that, really highly competitive stuff, and give you some tactics to possibly increase your reach on the web.
Yeah.
So that will be very helpful, I think. We've got a good lineup. If you go to searchtalklive.com, you can check out a list of all the people we have scheduled on the show starting the first of the year. We're booked out until March already. Half of March is almost booked. Because of the popularity.
Mm-hmm.
But Rand Fishkin's coming back. We're having some more people from SEM Rush. All kinds of people are coming to the show next year. Really great lineup. I'm trying to get some really high-up CEOs of certain companies. I'm not going to mention those right now. But we're really working hard to improve the show and make it even better for you.
Yeah. New stuff, new content, new information, and great advice as always.
Yeah. And like I said, we cover a lot of things in this episode. We're going to talk about content marketing, something that just about everybody that listens to us has a part in somewhere, somehow.
Yeah.
And our guest today is well diverse in the content marketing industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And well known. But our guest today is Heather Lloyd-Martin. She is the CEO of SuccessWorks SEO Copywriting. And how are you today, Heather?
Hey, guys. I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing great.
So glide to have you on.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
This is one of the aspects of the show we haven't covered a lot on.
Yeah.
But I think it's vitally important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to get started, Heather, if you could, thanks for joining us. If you could just kind of introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about what you have going on.
Yeah, sure. I have been working in the SEO content space for about, I don't know now, 18 years, 19 years, I think. So back in the day where it was just a few people hanging around in Dallas for a search engine strategy show and like 4 women were part of the industry. And so it's been a wild time to watch the ride of content and how the importance and the tactics and strategies have changed over the years. So back in the day, I was pretty much just content writer and helping clients produce that content because a lot of clients didn't have in-house help back then.
Yeah.
But it's kind of shifted to where what I'm doing today is walking into companies. Sometimes they're agencies, sometimes they're client-side companies who say, there's stuff going on with our content. We know it's not working. We're not sure why it's not working. So can you help us figure out what that is and get all the writers on the same page and fix it? So moving forward, we have a plan. So that's what I'm doing in a lot of these cases is untangling content issues for clients and then moving them forward and saying, okay, here's how to do the SEO writing. Here are all the things to think about in terms of the opportunities for your site. And so I'm going to go away now, and you guys can just keep on keeping on and focus on these key elements and move forward.
Nice. So, I mean, companies call you when they, things aren't working out for them. So, I mean, what are the main issues you typically see when you're, with a company?
Oh, there's a lot of issues. A lot of times it is the company has a style guide from years ago. Mm-hmm. And so they think that writing content is you take a key phrase and you exact match that key phrase X number of times in the copy. And I will get requests in from people who say, my SEO is telling me that I need to have this ungrammatical key phrase in the content. It's driving me nuts to produce content like this. Can you help? And a lot of these are bigger companies. You'd expect maybe smaller companies having these kinds of issues, but it's a lot of times the big boys because these style guides and these trainings that they've had are so embedded in their process, and a lot of the challenges are process, that they don't know that there's any other way to do it. And when they realize, oh my goodness, so I don't have to exact match the key phrase 20 times in the copy and keep a key phrase density, their lives are suddenly better. And like right there is a major aha moment where they can start getting back a little bit of their market share and conversions if they've lost that. So that's on one side is the SEO, and another side that I see outside of process and people is just they're trying to write for sales, but they've hired writers that have never written sales copy, which is its own separate kind of animal. Yeah. So they don't know why they're not converting, and they're not converting because it can be as simple as they don't have a call to action on their webpage. Yeah, right. So once you point it out and you train them, it's like, oh, yeah, got that. But there's that in between where they're not sure what's going on. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, one thing you kind of touched on was they have these old style guides and how they're writing copy and stuff that even it worked maybe 5 to 10 years ago. But I think the consumers are evolving in how they're reading content, because it seems like we've seen everything under the sun when it comes to content and how you're trying to sell to us. So in that aspect, has the whole copywriting and your content, has that become more of something you're just going to have to be more creative with and testing on what's working and what's not working?
Well, creative with is one part of it. It kind of goes back into storytelling, which is a big buzzword around content marketing, but it's true. Telling the story of the site and the purpose can also help with the conversions. But a lot of times a big mistake is the customer persona, the folks that the site serves. Maybe they never had it figured out in the first place. Yeah. Or it shifted over time, and they're now serving a slightly different market than they used to. So they've got all this content written towards X target audience, and it's it's not correct anymore, and they need to shift that approach, which they might kind of know when they're trying to figure out their strategy, but they're not sure how to bridge that gap between what they've written before and what they need to write in order to hit that correct tone and voice for their current and paying clients.
Mm-hmm. Is it just the lack of education on their part as far as knowing their customer and what they like, or?
It's lack of education. It's a lot of times it's lack of time. That, again, they're going off sort of an older model that they knew maybe at a time, once upon a time, what was correct. Mm-hmm. And now that things have shifted out, they haven't kept up with that. And there could be new people coming in too. A lot of times what I'll see on content is they will hire entry-level people to create content for the clients or the company, which mm-hmm. isn't necessarily wrong if they've got training, but you can't expect someone who has never produced content to understand the nuances of how to create a customer persona and the questions to ask to figure out how to write good content. So There's kind of a disconnect there.
Right. Absolutely. For our listeners, we forgot to mention, we have our special guest today, Heather Lloyd-Martin, CEO of SuccessWorks SEO Copywriting. If you want to get your questions in, you can do so. Hashtag Search Talk Live on Twitter. As we're talking about, I think a topic that all of you at least have questions or are interested in, and that's content, SEO copywriting, content marketing, all of the above. So hashtag Search Talk Live on Twitter. So Heather, when you're getting called into these companies, and it seems like, well, first of all, would you say that in a lot of companies, kind of the one big missing puzzle piece is their content when you're looking at their whole marketing and SEO scheme? Is that the one thing that they mainly are having an issue with?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There could be some issues around the people creating it or the process, but it usually all boils down to those words on a page somehow not working.
Yeah. It's probably lack of strategy, too. It's just kind of like, oh, here's the topic. Let's write about
it. Exactly. This sounds cool. Let's write about that. And we'll kick it out on social and get lots of likes. But why isn't any of this content ever positioning for us?
Right. So let's kind of break it down a little bit. When you're going through kind of doing an audit, so to speak, what are you trying to what are you looking for? How are you going to diagnose the issues and kind of break things down and really start chipping away and making improvements or adjustments?
Good question.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I look at the site from two different aspects. So there's one is sort of the geeky SEO aspect. So you start looking for that low-hanging fruit of how are the titles? A lot of times that's a huge miss right there is the bad titles. What does the content look like? Does it have key phrases in the content that you can recognize and synonyms, or is it like tightly focused? And looking at meta description, sort of those kinds of low-hanging SEO stuff fruit that a number of companies can start making some simple adjustments and get on track. And then there's also sort of the more traditional writing/copywriting aspects of, is it hitting a customer persona? Does the voice of the site resonate and dovetail with what the site owner wants to have? So if you have a very consultative type of company, that tends to be a different tone and feel from the site as opposed to something that is more e-commerce or more strictly B2B. So I look at that. Is the content, do they have content throughout the buy cycle, or is it content just focused on the tippy top where people are ready to buy, and which you typically see in B2B content? Is it written for to have a sales structure at all? So is that person that's writing the content, do they know how to write to sell, or are they just kind of throwing words on a page and hoping for a conversion? So with diving into the analytics, and the SEO stuff and the copywriting stuff, then I tend to get a pretty good picture of, usually about 5 or 6 action steps for the client of what they can do to make their content better. In a lot of cases, it's teaching the client how to research key phrases because they've never done that before.
Yeah.
Or they've done it, but they've got an SEO on high giving them key phrases that may or may not work with their content and what they're trying to accomplish. So there's also sometimes bridging that disconnect too between the content team and the SEO team that may be somewhat at odds with their processes. Even if they've got the same goal, they aren't necessarily working together.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add to that. I mean, I think that when you're writing the content, you need to think about the person reading it first and the search engine second.
Right.
I mean, because ultimately, you can't, it's not like you used to, you add the keyword phrase and stuff it in there.
Yeah.
Sprinkle it throughout the
Well, I know many of the people I talk with who are having issues with their content or what their main goal is, and you might experience this too, Heather, is the first thing that's out of their mouth is, how do I get this to rank?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what and so everything's like, okay, how do I get this to rank? Which, of course, is important. But when you have that mindset, the only thing you're thinking about is specific elements that are geared towards the search engines, and you're leaving the user completely behind, which is most likely your main tool of spreading that content and getting the word out.
Well, exactly. And especially if you start looking at what you see the trends are for long form content. Mm-hmm. And where I see a lot of companies and site owners now starting to freak out is saying, so what you're saying is in order for me to do well with my content, every article must be at least 2,000 words or 3,000 or 1,500, whatever the latest study is saying, in order to get maximum shares and maximum rankings. And they start wondering how they're going to make that work with their content cycles, considering, those types of in-depth articles take a long, long time to produce.
Yeah, right.
And what folks forget, which I totally understand because it's easy to get into that SEO only mindset, is that not every article needs to be 2,000 words in order to be useful for the target audience. In fact, some articles can be shorter. And Steve Rayson and from BuzzSumo and I have talked a lot about this, in that yes, there is that magical sweet spot, and you can see a lot of really spectacular in-depth articles that will position for a number of different key phrases. But sometimes you just want to write a 500-word post or 700-word post about X that'll help your readers, and that's okay too. It might not be a massive positioning machine, but it's not all about Google. It's about the people that buy from you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, let me ask you this. Do you get, I mean, yes, I've seen a trend. I mean, it doesn't have to be 2,000 words or anything like that, but I've seen longer articles that are doing better in search than, the in-depth stuff. I'm not just saying about the crap stuff. I'm just, the stuff that really goes into detail about the story or that they're writing about. Let's see, where was I going with that? I'm looking at my notes here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have seen, it seems like, and as the common topic is the longer the better. And some people want to combat that. The trends I'm seeing is somewhat kind of where it's going. Is that something that you're seeing, Heather? Is that if you're going to dive into content, you don't have to necessarily put out, 100 pieces a week, but if you're going to put one together, you want it to be in-depth and kind of more long-form. And not only is that going to provide value for the user, but for, your goals and search engines as well.
Yeah, and it's funny to watch the evolution of the ultimate word count for content, because I remember back in the day when all of this first started, I would get on stage and say, you want to have at least 250 words on a page. And people would freak out saying, really? How could we ever put that many words on a page? People won't read it.
You're right.
And so now, we don't even think of 250 words. That's like thin content that nobody even wants to play with anymore.
Yeah.
So with the longer form content, I think having that kind of content is important to have on the site for those big authoritative pieces where you want to say, hey, we know about how to check content quality, for example, and here's an in-depth article about it. And if you spend your time focusing on creating those types of assets that you can repackage, that you can do different things with and promote, then you can still kick out some in-between posts along the way. Mm-hmm. But you also want to consider, are we creating posts that are helping our buyers and tying back to the business purpose and tying back to our buy cycle? Right. Or are we publishing just to publish? And a lot of agencies and site owners get into that I'm publishing just to publish trap because they're afraid once they get off of that treadmill, so to speak, what happens? What happens if they change their strategy? And sometimes what they find is that if they manage their strategy right, they can sometimes drop their publication frequency, come up with better content, and actually still maintain or do even better because you're able to reach a different audience with really quality content.
Yeah. And I mean, that works out twofold, too, because not only are you building credibility for your site with people that are reading your content, but Google will start seeing your site as an authority with these more in-depth articles.
Yeah, and I think I would like to see if it's true, but I'm just going to go on a limb. It's probably more linkable content as well because you're actually providing that value, and whether it's statistics or opinion pieces or whatever it may be, those longer forms of content are probably the more linkable content that you're looking for.
Well, exactly, and it gives your company an opportunity to say, here is our take on X topic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that is what's really valuable there. It's not that it's not just that it's a linkable access, because it is, but it's also a chance for a company to come out and say, okay, all of these other companies' competition you see in the search results page, they have this way of taking the article. This is our way that can tie into a process, a benefit, or something that is really good for that reader, that can help that reader along the way think, hey, when I want to eventually work with a company like this, I like their approach and their take on this, I'm more apt to contact this company over other companies that might not have differentiated themselves, or there was kind of like a Me Too article where you're not really saying anything different from the other articles that are out there competing in the search results pages.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a listener question that got emailed in. Connor, thanks for emailing your question. If you want to email questions in, you can do Caleb or Robert at searchtalklive.com, or you can use hashtag searchtalklive or Twitter. He asks, he's trying to write for brand awareness. What type of content should he write for brand awareness to increase his brand, and how should he get that out there?
Okay, so for brand awareness, that was email, so we can't ask what kind of industry it was.
Yeah.
So sort of in general, writing for brand awareness, you can also look at, are there any types of search positions that you want to dominate for your brand? That's one way to look at it. Look at the competition and see what those topics are, and consider what kinds of content that you can build out to be able to compete with those other articles on the search results page, such as what we were talking about. But there's also figuring out where your audience hangs out, what they're doing. So if you're working for B2B on brand awareness, that's going to be a different play than B2C. So I work with a lot of B2B companies, and brand awareness might be something like, okay, you think about that big old article that you might write. Can you turn that into a SlideShare presentation, assuming that your audience is on SlideShare? Mm-hmm. Is there a way to create a webinar for brand awareness to where you can invite people, doesn't have to sell anything, just here is how to do X, Y, and Z that can somehow tie back into your company, or publishing on other sites different than yours, like guest posting or Medium or whatever could work as a way to build out the brand other than just the search results page and maybe your tiny little network that you have, to get other people to know about your site, to know about your brand, and then help that top of mind awareness when they're interested in a product or service like what you have to offer. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is just going back to where are our readers, our listeners hanging out? What are some things that we can try? And then Ann Smarties, who's so smart about growth hacking, I love her take on how to do stuff. Like, you try certain things, certain little content marketing strategies, give it X amount of months to see if they fly. If it works, awesome. You use it as part of your ongoing strategy. And if it doesn't work, then you haven't put out that much money or that much time, and you can kill it quickly and move on to something different.
Yeah, I like it. Kind of a question I have, one thing that you had mentioned was medium.com, and I know a lot of people have talked about it. It's, of course, that, blogging site. You can go on there, create an account, and write about it. If you're a company, what type of content should you be putting on that's going to actually attract an audience? Because I think a lot of people use it trying to see, okay, can I repurpose content on there? What do I need to put on it? Is there a certain type of content you see that actually works for companies on a platform like that?
I've seen different approaches, and I'm not quite sure what has worked for some companies other than others, but there is that big push to repurpose because it makes life easy in a lot of cases, and it does help a blog post, for example, get a bigger stretch out there.
Right.
A lot of what I'll see on Medium that's a little more interesting is where maybe the CEO or someone that is higher up in the company has an opinion about X, or a point of view that might not be appropriate for the blog necessarily, but is something that is interesting to the industry, has value to the reader, and could somehow indirectly drive traffic to the main site because people like the CEO's point of view, so they decide to go through to the main site and check stuff out.
Great. Yeah. I have another question here. What are ways in-house teams can easily generate content when they don't have a lot of time?
Oh, yeah. This one is a big one that I hear a bunch. And a lot of times, even the in-house teams that have a lot of writers, they'll face this because they have X number of articles or posts that they have to produce a week. And so they are already pretty time strapped. So, of course, there is always learning how to repurpose content. And for a lot of companies, they forget about repurposing. They don't realize that they could go back to an older blog post and freshen it up and make it brand new and relevant for 2017 in this case, and republish that. But there's also some things that they can do on their site. So if they have a podcast, for example, like this podcast, rather than just having a link to the podcast, some companies are including transcripts or modified transcripts. The advantage is that even if you have a really short interview, say a 10 or 15 minute interview with someone, then the transcript could be, say, 3,000 words. So already you have a really nice, meaty article that you don't have to massage much. Example of that is what Rand does on his Whiteboard Fridays. He's got the video, but he also has that modified transcript with visuals that for the people who don't want to read, it can be an excellent, to watch the video, it's an excellent way to quick scan everything and get everything they wanted out of that discussion. So I always recommend looking at things that you can do that way, as well as if you are working in, say, a technical B2B where you have engineers, for example, who are supposed to write content, but don't, then often you can interview those folks. You can have one person tasked on the team to contact those engineers, sit down with them, record what they have to say, turn that into a transcript that you're able to massage a little bit. And then again, you've got really spectacular content that the engineer might not have had time to write herself, but when she's talking about it, it's a lot easier for her to schedule that time. You don't have to go back and forth and try to get the subject matter experts to create that content. And that person who's creating that content and doing the interview can structure the interview to where it hits a lot of different topics their readers would want to know about in a really simple, easy way to work that into process. So a lot of times trying to find those content nuggets is looking at what are some low-hanging fruit opportunities that we can use with our existing content or moving forward in order to shorten the content creation cycle but still create good quality assets.
Yeah, and I think one question that a lot of people have is if they're going to repurpose an older piece of content, is there certain things they should do to enhance that, or it's just kind of make updates to the content and adjust, maybe it wasn't performing well for a certain phrase that you wanted it to and how you can update that? What kind of things should they be doing to older posts to actually make them more relevant and possibly perform better?
Well, there's a spectrum of what you can do. So there are always those older posts that maybe have good content, but maybe not performing that well. Mm-hmm. A lot of times those posts were written before there was any type of optimization, SEO type of stuff in play. And so you can certainly go back on those and play with re-optimizing them. Change the title. See if you can come up with a snazzier headline / title that can position as well as get conversions off the search results page. Add some key phrases, maybe flesh it out a little bit more as headlines and subheadlines. So there is some sort of basic optimization stuff that you can do with some of your evergreen posts that might not need much of an overhaul, but could be more searchable, right?
Yeah.
And then there is also on the other side of that spectrum, the big old revision where maybe you have a piece of content that is evergreen that you add to every year. So you're talking about the latest and greatest for 2017 and you update it for that. Or you have a piece of content that was relevant a couple years ago, but you want to add more to it because, say, with SEO writing, there's more to talk about now. Mm-hmm. So what I'll do in those kinds of situations is I look at, adding more images and sometimes better images. Looking at what parts of the content that I need to completely revise and as well as looking at any other additional optimization strategies. So what once was a pretty good post, but maybe not 100% up to date, turns into a really strong, up-to-date post that did not take as much time to create as if I wanted to, say, do that again from scratch. So it still takes time to update that older content and repurpose it, but it doesn't tend to take as much time as if you want to sit down and rewrite that article again from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
What would be your advice on a company that wants to give their team the knowledge to become better, to write better content?
It depends on where the knowledge levels are for the company and for the writers. Where the mistake some companies make is that they will send some or all of their writers to a conference and say, go forth and learn everything you can about content strategy and copywriting, and then come back and train the team with what you know. Mm-hmm. And the challenge with that is within the conference setting, there's not a lot of personalized content that speaker can share with those team members of what to do specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they get some basic knowledge, but not enough to really move forward. So in some cases, what I recommend is the company can either have someone on staff who might be a more experienced team member who keeps up with this stuff to have a training role as part of what they do. And it might be every single month or a couple times a month, there are certain updated trainings that folks can take during lunch, and maybe they onboard with writers on, if you are a brand new writer, here are the webinars that we've already recorded for you to learn everything there is to know about our process and say how to write the content.
Right.
In some cases, companies need something a little bit more in-depth, especially if they're trying to figure out what's wrong with their content in the first place. And so in that case, sometimes a good option for them is to have a combination of training plus here's what's going on with your site. Here's your review. Here are your opportunities. Here are the things that you are doing really horribly on that you can immediately improve. And then here is a customized training based on your site, your issues, your everything. And that way the writers can all get together in one room and do the key phrase research or talk about strategy or figure out a way to create the editorial calendar other than one person just coming up with random ideas and calling it good.
Right. Yeah.
And so as long as moving forward, there's always some sort of training component in place, an education component in place, which could easily be handled in-house, then that way at all times, any writer who comes in is on the same page with everyone else about how to do things, the importance of doing things, and then of course, you have the updates of what we were doing last year might not be as good to do anymore. Here are the new things that we need to consider in order to stay competitive.
Gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to pause real quick, for our sponsor. If you're listening to Search Talk Live, we really appreciate it. We have our special guest today, Heather Lloyd-Martin, CEO of SuccessWorks SEO Copywriting. If you'd like to get your questions in, you can do so on Twitter using hashtag #SearchTalkLive, easiest way. We are sponsored by the Robert Palmer family of companies. You can go to robertpalmercompanies.com, check out everything they have to offer. A lot of cool stuff there. That's robertpalmercompanies.com. We appreciate them sponsoring Search Talk Live, but have been since day one, so we definitely appreciate that.
Yep.
So, go visit them. A lot of cool stuff. And like I said, if you want to get your questions in for Heather, you can do so using hashtag #SearchTalkLive on Twitter.
Now, Heather, let me ask you, one of the things you look at is analytics. Now, typically, par for the course, a content site has a higher bounce rate than you would say, an e-commerce site or whatever. So, because they go to the article and they leave.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what are some of the things that you look for when you're looking at analytics that you would say to an individual blogger or something like that, what they really should be taking a look at?
Well, it's true when you're mentioning that the bounce rates are usually higher because people are bouncing into a post, for example. They've gotten what they want out of the post and then they boogie out. Mm-hmm. So you can also start looking at other types of conversion metrics that go along with that. So, for example, are people taking action for any micro conversion steps? So for many sites, the goal of having that blog post is they want folks to subscribe to a newsletter. So looking to see, are people subscribing to that newsletter? Mm-hmm. Looking at how long are people staying on that page? So if you have an in-depth post of 3,000 words and people are spending 10 seconds on that page,
right,
you figure they're not reading that page.
Yeah.
And that is actually a huge opportunity for a lot of sites. They don't realize that when they're checking out the analytics. They're happy to see that people are hitting the content, and they never read that little time on page statistics to realize, oh, well, gee, they're not really reading it. They're just kind of visiting it and saying goodbye as they bounce out. Right. So also in terms of just flat out conversions of like if you're writing a sales page, are people actually taking action? And buying from you or requesting that quote or whatever it is that you want them to do for that main conversion step that you want folks to take.
Yeah.
And for a lot of companies, that is another huge disconnect because they didn't write to sell, or their sales pages are so dreadful, it's really hard for them for folks to figure out how to take action in the first place. So I encourage folks to start like looking at Search Console to see click-through rates off the search results page, and then looking at the page performance itself to see where those little opportunities are. So if you've got, for example, a high positioning page with a really bad click-through rate that nobody is clicking through to the actual page, then boom, you have possibly an opportunity there to maybe tweak the title and meta description to see if you can get slightly more conversions and drive that click-through rate up.
Yeah.
Are those articles that aren't getting as much attention in the SERPs, maybe link off of that one article that's getting
doing
all
well
the traffic? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's kind of get to the $1 million question, and is how can companies figure out content ideas? Like, how can they really find what they need to be writing about, the content they need to be pushing out? Maybe they're heavily leaning on so much content with the trying to push sales in front of them, or maybe they're doing too much brand awareness. What content they can be putting out, and I think a lot of them are trying to figure out, is there a happy medium?
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the easiest ways to figure out what folks want to read is to just ask them. And if for sites that have a newsletter, I recommend having some sort of reader survey somehow in the process. It could be something that you do once a year, a couple times a year. It could also be part of the email onboarding process where you thank somebody for signing up, and then maybe in a secondary or tertiary email you say, hey, I'm wondering what the topics are you want to know more about.
Right.
So that doing it on the front end like that gives you the advantage, assuming that the company really wants to nurture those newsletter subscribers. And for a lot of companies, those are the big bread and butter, right? Those are the folks that love you so much that they give up their personal information to get your emails every week or every month. So to be able to set up that initial relationship where you're asking them, what do you want to know? That can help nurture that subscriber and make them love you even more, because you're asking the question of how can I help you? How can I better serve you with this content?
Yeah. And it could be, you could have the answer right there in front of your face too in analytics. If you're looking at a site's analytics, what pages are getting all the traffic, that might answer your question right there as well.
Exactly. And for some folks, they might not click with the analytics. Sometimes they have to ask,
right.
Or vice versa. So there's asking the newsletter subscribers. There's asking the folks who work in customer service or the sales folks. What are the questions that you get every single day? Mm-hmm. Those are topics. There are looking at any type of documentation, internal documentation that a company has about things to think about, ways to, those are all topics. So there are usually ways to tease out the topics, like you said, through analytics or through just flat out asking folks who are your readers, that you're able to build out an editorial calendar fairly easily. And I'm making air quotes that you can't see when I say fairly easily. Because at least you can get the ideas. And how I look at it is, if I can get 2 ideas a workday, so what is that, 10 ideas a week, 40 a month, of just some sort of topic. It might be something I use. It might be something I ignore until I can figure out what to do with it. But something that will help me, that gives me that spark of, here's a content idea, that when you go to flesh out that editorial calendar, it's not so bad, because you have these ideas. You've got this swipe file, basically, of things that you can talk about. And you can also get from your swipe file, put in your swipe file of what your competition is publishing. So I look at the Content Marketing Institute, which it's not really competition. But it's a really great resource site where we kind of share similar thoughts and similar ways of process and do things. And I look at what they're writing and thinking, that's a spectacular post right there. I can tailor that for my audience, and because I know this is a question that folks are asking, and here's a different way to serve based on the brainstorm I got from another site. And so that's always really yummy too.
Gotcha. Well, I have a couple more questions here. How can a company best manage their outsource freelancers?
Yeah, for outsourced freelancers are kind of a different animal, because for companies where I talk about the triangle of success, right? You've got people, process, and education. Mm-hmm. Then those outsourced freelancers can either be really spectacular because they're high quality writers who are great members of a company's internal team, or it can be a mess where a company says, I got $10, I need 3,000 words. And then the company is shocked when the copy comes back and it's horribly written and takes the company like 5 hours to rewrite it and blows their budget, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I talk about with working and managing freelancers is know that you get what you pay for. And it doesn't mean that you have to spend $500 for every single outsourced post. In some cases, that might make sense. In a lot of cases, you can get that content quality for a lot less money. But if you're working with a writer and paying them that $10 a post, you're incentivizing the writer to work quickly and not give you quality. And so to just know, if you have a low budget, you're probably going to be doing some in-house fixing, and to account for that and to have someone on staff who can help with that. So that's one thing to think about with working with freelancers. And the second thing is to give them the maximum amount of information that you can. So style guides are important. If you are an agency that writes for a number of different clients, having that customer, that client profile and that persona document that you can provide to your writer is really important in terms of what the tone and feel should be, what the main benefits should be, everything that can help that writer create the content, because the more information you give her, then the more specific that copy will be. If you give her a two or three sentence blurb of, this is an SEO agency that you're writing for, they work with small business clients, that content writer who's outsourced isn't going to be able to pick up on what they need to. And so the copy that you get back is not going to be specific enough for the client to sign off on it. It's going to be very general rather than specific. So the more information that you can give the freelancer in terms of the information about the client, the style guide, as well as when you need to hit that deadline and what the other expectations are about the deliverables, that's when you'll have a very successful relationship. Where things get funky is when the writers don't have enough information to write, and then they're working on a really tight deadline. So again, they're incentivized to work fast, and what the company will get back is so writing that needs to get fixed. And that's not the purpose of outsourcing. You don't want to have to fix what it is that you've outsourced.
Yeah, and if you're paying $5 to $10 for an article, you might want to use Copyscape to make sure they just didn't copy it off another website.
Yeah, that's true too. And it's scary to even think about that people would do that, but of course they would do that because they didn't pay $10 an article.
Right. Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah. All right.
Let's see. We got any more questions?
We do. But
we got about 6 minutes. 7 minutes.
As we're closing out on the show, like I said, if you have questions, you can get in at hashtag Search Talk Live on Twitter, as we have our special guest today, CEO of SuccessWorks SEO Copywriting, Heather Lloyd-Martin, which we really appreciate joining us today.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Trying to see if we have any questions going through. All right. Yeah, so I think one big thing is you have your other aspect of copywriting and content, and that's kind of the sales push. And so when you're writing for the sales, you don't want to seem, I think a lot of people go way too far with it, or they don't do it enough as far as when you're writing the content, it's either really in your face and people can kind of pick up on that. How can you be kind of gentle with the sales to where you're actually wanting, people are understanding, okay, this is what they're asking me to do, but they don't feel like you're forcing the hand, if that makes sense.
You're like, buy now.
Yeah, like you got that. I know people say it's kind of cliche, but that used car salesman feel to it, to where it's, it's kind of pushing you on it,
Yeah, and you still see those kinds of direct response landing pages online, and people will swear up and down that they're about like 5,000 pages with buy now and different fonts that are everywhere and different colors. And it seems that would detract from the sales experience more than it would. Yeah. But the main thing to remember when you're writing sales copy is you're writing it for a person. You're not writing it for a target audience necessarily, although you kind of are. But to just picture that person who, if they were to call you and say, well, why should I buy from you or work with you over the competition, you wouldn't give them that hard sell. There would be things that you would say to them in order to pre-qualify them, basically, and then show how your product or service can benefit them. So when you're writing the content, it's the same type of thing, where a lot of times it's more of a conversational tone. You're making it about the reader. So you mentioned the word you a bunch of times because that's really important to show that that you know what the prospect needs in order for her to feel comfortable taking that next conversion step. You structure the copy in a way where it makes it very easy to parse out what those benefits are and make it easy to have that call to action. So in some cases, you will still see that direct response, buy now, I'm going to get in your face until you buy from me kinds of writing. And a lot of the direct response copywriters from the old school are still using that on their sites today. But what I see now is even humor will work as long as they understand who their target company is. So, for example, the Dollar Shave Club, they write copy towards what we would call the tightwad audience. So these are folks that do not like to spend money, are looking for good deals, are very analytical in how they purchase things. Any type of reference to you deserve it or luxury is going to bounce them out because they don't want to see that in the copy. Yeah. They know how to write the copy that hits all those high points where it's not a hard sell. The benefits are there. It's totally customized for the target audience. And I think they're doing pretty darn well with what they're selling today. So they've created quite this little brand. So I love using them as an example because they have all of that really dialed in.
Yeah. I completely agree. They understand their audience, and I'm one of them. I'm a member.
There you go.
Yep.
So you're a tight one.
Reference, but yeah.
Yeah, no, my wife will call me. Yes, she'll use that reference for sure. She'll call me a tight one. Question for you. I think we had once people saw a different type of content known as infographics was, working, I think, we got flooded with them. And I think another thing that we're getting flooded with right now is ebooks. Do you think ebooks is something that still helps companies, I guess, gain information or email addresses or something like that? But that's something they invest their time in, is creating an ebook, and what kind of value, if you're going to, should you be providing?
I know companies that swear up and down by ebooks, that they will produce them from old content. They will sell them on Kindle. They will offer them as part of their site. And they tend to be just really good mini guides on X. So a little bit longer than long form content, but not like 5,000 pages worth of content. Yeah. And I haven't directly used them myself, but I've seen companies that have done it and have done well. Mm-hmm. One of the things that can be a little bit challenging about the ebook is that if you're already freaked out by creating a whole bunch of content, the thought of writing an ebook or producing an ebook, that's a long play content strategy. That's something that tends to take a while to really pull together. So there is something, I think it's called Beacon, that will help pull blog posts, so you can have related blog posts from WordPress into a nice little ebook format that you can massage, has the pretty little graphics, and then start experimenting with them. And if that could be a low barrier to entry for companies that want to try it, but don't necessarily have the bandwidth to write something brand new from scratch and try it as like an email giveaway or some other incentive to see how people react to it. And again, as a growth hacking idea, if it works and you're getting signups, awesome. If it doesn't work, then you've got a content asset that you can use, but you know that maybe you let that go for now, or you try it again a different way at another time. But certainly they can be useful, but you're right. There's a whole lot of ebooks out there, and that's just another place where site owners have to figure out, do we want to write it? How competitive do we want to be with it? And is there an easy way to produce it just to test? So I'm all for the quick and dirty test to see what works.
Nice. Yeah. Well, Heather, we are out of time now.
All right.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Your information has been
that was awesome.
Helpful to thousands of people listening.
Yay, that's great. Thank you so much for having me.
Great stuff. So maybe we can have you back sometime.
Yeah, hopefully.
That'd be cool.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. All right, guys. We had another great show with a lot of good information.
Yeah. And if you missed any part of today's show, we will be sharing it. We always do right after the show.
5 minutes after the show, it'll go out.
Yeah. Or you can go on Sprecher and check it out there, or searchtalklive.com. Tab previous shows.
Yeah. Do us a huge favor. If you do go on Sprecher and listen to us, please hit that like button.
Yep.
We kind of go off of that to get the popularity of the shows and all that stuff, and be very helpful. And then go to our website, sign up for the mailing list. That way you can get updates on the current shows. We got one more show this year, and it's on content marketing as well. We're going to be off for 3 weeks. We'll be back on the 10th. Who are we starting out with on the 10th here?
On the 10th? Look at our handy-dandy notebook.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, next week we have Aaron Robbins.
Yep.
President of Ginza Metrics, so that'll be a good one. Make sure you tune in next week.
Content stuff.
Yeah. And then on the 10th, we have Mike King.
Yep.
Of iPullRank. So that'll be a good one. That'll be a good one to kick off the show.
Be an SEO first of the year.
Yeah, SEO first of the year. But no, we appreciate you listening today. Thank you to our special guest, Heather Lloyd-Martin.
Yep.
That was a fantastic show. And like I said, if you missed any part of today's show, check it out on Sprecher or searchtalklive.com, or you can download us on iTunes. We're all over the place.
Yeah, please, if you like the show and the content that we provide, please share it with your friends.
Yeah.
Share it out on social media. We're trying to spread the word. Next year is going to be amazing. I can't believe the amount of people have listened to our show.
Right.
We're a little over a year now doing the show, and it's been awesome. And we've been meeting the most amazing guests, making friends out.
Awesome,
people on Twitter and everything
relationships,
else.
Man.
Yeah.
So we appreciate all our guests being a part of the show, helping spread the word and dropping their knowledge. And of course, we appreciate you, the listener, as you are on this journey with us. And being a part of our show.
Real quick, congratulations to Michael Sprecher, and also I don't have the names in front of me, for getting the most listens to on the show for the year. So anyway, sorry if I forgot your name. I'm just got something else going on right now. But we'll see you next week in our last show of 2017.
Yep. Have a good
16. one.
Search Talk Live is a presentation of the Robert Palmer family of companies.